Welcome to Straight Talk on Retirement, your no-hype source for financial advice and making informed choices about your retirement planning. Get on the phone to talk today at 969-KTRS.
The opinions voiced in this show are for general information only and are not intended to provide specific advice or recommendations for any individual. To determine which investments may be appropriate for you, consult with your attorney, accountant, and financial advisor or tax advisor prior to investing. Securities offered through LPL Financial, member FINRA SIPC. Investment advice offered through Private Advisor Group, a registered investment advisor. Private Advisor Group and JBL Financial Services, Inc. are separate entities from LPL Financial.
Now, here are your retirement coaches, Jeff and Aaron Lapidus.
Well, hello, St. Louis, and welcome to Straight Talk on Retirement. You're live and local, St. Louis's favorite financial call-in show. I'm Jeff Lapidus, president of JBL Financial Services. Our offices are located in beautiful, rain-covered, downtown Olivet, Missouri.
Downtown, is it?
It's around town, right?
I just didn't think there was a downtown.
Big deal. We've moved our world headquarters to 9300 Olive Boulevard.
Yes, we have. Officially as of yesterday.
2 blocks west of 170 on the inner belt. It's just great. Very happy to do that. And we obviously want to thank all of our listeners and all of our clients for helping us make the move.
That's right.
Couldn't have done it without you, so thank you so much. Again, Aaron and I are fee-based financial planners. I have a 40-year history in doing so. Aaron's been with me for 8 years now. Almost 50 years between us, babe.
That's a lot of years.
Add Grandpa, another 45.
It's like a million.
Close to 100. I love that, right?
That's right.
And what do? We
help our clients make smart choices about their money. The way we do that is by designing a game plan, a written step-by-step strategy, a real game plan that has several goals in mind.
First is to preserve, protect, and prudently grow the assets our clients have taken their entire lifetimes to accumulate. Second is to deliver a reliable stream of income, one that they can count on, so they can do all the things they'd like to do during retirement.
And third is cost-effectively addressing their health care needs, like helping individuals enroll in Medicare and choosing the right plan to supplement their medical coverage.
And then when they're done enjoying their assets during their lifetime, we show them how to pass them on to the people they love, whether it's their spouses or children, grandchildren, churches, or charities, whoever it might be, with Uncle Sam or the tax courts taking a big bite out of their money. And as their wealth managers, Aaron and I, watch their money every single day to make sure they're staying on track. And that's why they call us retirement coaches. Well, I'll tell you what.
Happiest day ever. Well, maybe yesterday.
Yeah, was
yes.
a happy day. And, obviously it was a happy day here at KTRS, 25 years.
It's a lot of milestones.
It certainly is, and we're fortunate because in 3 weeks, we're going to hit our 16th year milestone.
Really?
Mm-hmm. 8 with you, 8 without you.
It's a long time.
It certainly is. Been nice to watch you grow up.
Why, thank you. I think I was already grown when I got here, though.
Well, but it's nice is that the clients have watched you grow up on the air waves, which is great. And that leads me to our first email. However, we do want to remind folks that our phone lines are open. We'd love to hear from you. 931-5877, *5877 for your cell phones, or 84126 from the text line. And I think it's starting to fire up here on the text line already, which is really good. Also want to remind folks that we do offer many ways for you to keep in touch with us during the week. One way is by our monthly newsletter, which you can catch at our website, jblfinancial.com.
That's right. Click on the floating box that appears on the left-hand side of the screen. Click sign up, and we'll send it out to you every single month, or scroll to the middle of the page and click sign up.
And here in our staff to keep the last 6 to 8 months of those archived for your viewing, printing, or downloading convenience. And we are in the midst, halfway, through our April newsletter.
Yes, we are. The first article, more people delay claiming Social Security. We've talked. Why are you laughing about that? Why is that funny?
Well, obviously that's one of the big questions that we're asked, which is, when should I take it? Should I put it off? Should I take it early? And it truly is really just based on their individual situation. what I think is interesting is that at least we found, and maybe part of the reason for this article is that we are seeing some of our clients delaying their Social Security because they're seeing their accounts grow. And and therefore giving them an opportunity to say, hey, why should I pass up on that 8% increase? We're doing okay on one side. Let's do okay on the other side. And that would be one reason why many folks are putting it off.
That is what the other reason is, that people are working longer.
We don't like that.
Well, it's true, and there's also a take-back involved in Social Security if you're under your normal retirement age and you are still working.
Yes.
So there are income limitations, so that can factor into people's decisions.
Absolutely.
The second article is Real Estate for Income and Diversification.
Oh, yeah.
The third article is Money Market Funds in a Low-Rate Environment. And finally, 5 tips to follow when applying for a mortgage.
There you go. Again, we call it the Coach's Corner. Easy to access. Just go to our website, jblfinancial.com. Click on that Coach's Corner newsletter icon in the bottom right-hand corner. We're happy to send that out to you by email every single month. There also is another way that many folks find interesting and desirable and wanting to contact us. They just go up to the right-hand corner.
Click the Contact Us button, and you can send us a question, a thought, a request for a coaching session.
We get lots of those.
Yes, we do.
Which we love. And many of them are for financial coaching sessions, which can include, and generally does include, Medicare planning. Some folks just want to do Medicare.
Some folks just want to hear about their finances.
Some folks they just want to get involved with the banter.
Who wouldn't?
Yes. Well, this actually, Aaron, just so you know, this particular listener did.
Oh, okay.
And he wrote me. It came under the
radar.
Wrote you. Well, it came under the radar because he sent it directly to my email, Jeff@jblfinancial.com.
The shock that you even saw it then.
Exactly. You take all the other ones, but I can't tell any Aaron stories here. But let
you can't.
No, I'm not going to. Let me just get to our email here.
Please,
Jeff. I like that. I've been a listener for many years. Having Aaron join the show has made it easier to listen to. Now, there are some people that might take offense by that. I'm certainly not one. I think you're much easier to listen to than I am.
Why, thank you.
And
I think I agree with that, especially if I haven't cleaned my room.
I know your mom does, so it's nice. And I've received a lot of those comments over the years. Your mom used to be a fan. Now she's just a homer. It just isn't really fair. She's very bright and confident. Did your mom write this on the air? Now it appears that you have your successor in place. Yes, I do, and I'm very fortunate in that.
This is a great email.
When do you plan on retiring, Coach? Well, let me tell you.
What would you do?
What's nice is that it is a little rainy outside this morning. My buds aren't on the golf course, and they would say, not golfing. Because as much as I love to play, I really don't do that very well. The truth is that I love my work, and I always have. And, giving people advice who actually truly want and appreciate it is the joy of my life. The other joy is obviously getting to see you every day, babe, which is really a lot of fun. And now that we bought this big building, somebody got to pay for it. So my dad always said, you go into debt, you take on obligations, and it makes you work harder. So,
well, I'm glad you'll be working harder.
I'm here for a while, so I will be here. I really do enjoy it. And, the truth is that, we're visiting with folks every day. We're helping them on their way down their journey to retirement. And it's fun to see, for me at least, the joy in their eyes when they realize they can successfully retire. They have confidence in us that we can help them do it. And then the nice part is that actually living the dream with them, seeing them doing it.
It's like you're retired yourself, but you don't have to be.
No.
Well, I think one of the things
I do get jealous. I do get jealous often, though.
Well, when they're on holiday.
Yes, I definitely get jealous.
I think one of the things that we always talk about with people, clients, prospective clients, is that retiring isn't necessarily just about the financial side of things. There's an emotional side, a social side to it. And usually people continue to work until there's something more compelling than their paycheck.
Yes. And
what could be more compelling than me?
I got it.
Right.
Well,
I mean, going nowhere.
Exactly. So, sorry. Stuck with me for a while. It's been almost 16 years. Hopefully I got another 16, right?
I think so, Moses.
Well, we'll see if you kick me off or not. That would be another thing. But I want to say I do have the biggest office in the place.
No, for long, not for long.
Which is kind of nice. And they did give me a chair so I could pass out if I have to in the middle of the day. So
nap time.
Very nice of you, babe. I really do. I do appreciate that. It's coming off your bonus, but don't worry about it. Again, our phone lines are open. We'd love to hear from you.
I haven't told you what's coming out of your bonus.
Yeah. 931-5877. Star 5877 from your cell phones.
See, that was really funny.
84126 from the please send me a text. Let me know when you have a grandchild. Text line.
See, that wasn't as funny as mine, but
That
it was a nice try.
Thank you.
I do have some texts, though. None of them reference grandchildren, though.
Okay. We got to work on that.
Hello.
Hello.
First texter. Do you normally have clients purchase long-term care policies at retirement, or is it too costly by that time? I'm currently 10 years from retirement and wondering if it's something to look into. Myself or my wife has never had a family member enter into a nursing home. Thanks.
Yes.
Well, so there.
No, this is a
great question.
This is a wonderful question, and what we recommend generally is that folks that are considering long-term care, and again, there's an emotional side to long-term care, but there's also the financial side.
Right.
And when we look at it from the financial point of view, we never recommend that folks do it before the age of 64. There's no reason to.
That's really between 63 and pre-65 is really the best time to consider long-term care coverage, unless you're someone that has a history of something in your family that would trigger the need for long-term care. You might consider it slightly earlier, but really not thinking about it. Right around the time of most people's retirement is when we are discussing long-term care with them, but also there are some other qualifications that should be met in terms of your need for long-term care.
Yes. Again, and this always works back to the same algebra problem, which is if I'm single, how much cash flow do I need, assuming that I am going to be receiving care? Let's say that's between $6,000 and $10,000 a month. How much are my inflows going to be when I do get to that ripe old age, frankly, in their 80s, most likely?
Right. It's usually late 70s is the earliest.
Unless you have a Christopher Reeve incident or something like that.
Sure, or you have some history of cognitive degeneration in your family, potentially.
Yeah, so, we're looking at what your inflow is going to be. There'll obviously be Social Security benefits. There could be pensions.
Most likely you will have already started your required minimum distributions from retirement accounts.
Exactly. You may even have other property. So where's the gap? And is there a gap is really what it comes down to. Right. So if there's a gap, if there is, what we would be doing is saying, okay, how much income do we need for generally a 3-year period? Because that's really to 5 years at the most, because that's all they're writing contracts for these days. For that period of time. It's difficult to get long-term care insurance to qualify for it after the age of 70. People, they just don't want to write it.
Right. So after the age of 70, if you're looking at what would be considered a comprehensive traditional policy in which you are paying premium in exchange for a benefit if you are to trigger it, most companies no longer write that after the age of 70, but that does not mean you don't have access to other options. They're called financial-based products, and those work slightly differently because you'll have to use your own money first.
Yeah, and at the same time, what you're doing is you have underwriting standards that can be strict.
Or more lenient, depending upon.
Right. These are life insurance-based options or annuity-based options. Again, non-traditional insurance methods to do this. If you're 10 years from retirement, I wouldn't worry about it.
Probably a little early.
And the other thing is, why pay for it? I mean, most folks, as Aaron was mentioning, if they do become chronically ill, it's usually happening late into their late 70s, 80s. Who wants to pay for a long-term care contract where the premium isn't guaranteed? And we know they typically go up every 3 to 4 years. And for a period of 20-plus years. I mean, 20 is enough. That's what we think.
Absolutely. Also, really, it's just amortized over a different amount of time, so you won't be spending any more, but it'll be less money out of your pocket on the front end.
Yeah. So
waiting does not cost you more money.
You're a youngster.
I have another excellent text question.
Or as they said in one of my favorite movies, forget about it.
Okay, next text question. Would a deferred annuity for 3 years be a good alternative to a CD?
Maybe. That's a good one.
Well, it is a good one because you're looking to, you're basically looking for the highest interest rate.
Right. Well, there's a couple things. Right. Number one is we know that with fixed annuities, you're provided a guaranteed contractual interest return from an insurance company. The interest that you earn during that period, whatever period, is income tax deferred until you decide to begin to make withdrawals.
Right.
So that can be beneficial. The rate, frankly, can be equal or better than a certificate deposit rate. That's all good and positive.
Mm-hmm.
But there's negatives. I mean, and there can be significant negatives. The big one is
liquidity.
Liquidity, right. When do you need, or do you see any time during this period that you may require a significant portion
of the funds that you're putting into this particular annuity? The reason for, there are liquidity issues with CDs, but the charges are much steeper to break annuities outside of their surrender period, inside of the surrender period.
Yes, all annuities have what we call a free withdrawal corridor, which is equal to 10%
of the initial premium.
That's correct. You go over 10%, you're paying a penalty. It could be, depending on the length of the insurance interest guarantee, the longer the length, the higher the penalty is in the early years. And
usually what you're doing is, if you're willing to lock the money in for longer, they're willing to continue to give you a slightly higher rate depending upon the contract. But so there are trade-offs here, just like with a CD.
Yeah. If you're thinking about it, well, maybe I'll hold on to it for 3 years and because I can get a better rate of interest, that's probably short-sighted, I think, because of all the restrictions that are involved. Unless this truly is excess cash that you're looking to put in a safe space that you won't be accessing. Or as an example, like our last texter, if you were grown up enough, maybe you're close to retirement age, right, 64, whatever, and you were thinking, hey, maybe long-term care is something I might want to consider and have. Maybe having an annuity that has a long-term care insurance component connected to it could give them some protection. And then obviously if they didn't need the money, that's great. It could just continue to sit there, maybe earn interest, have a higher long-term guarantee. And oftentimes when you add riders like that to annuity products, you're also extending the surrender period, meaning you're needing to hold it for longer than the initial contract. So there's all things to consider. Yeah, again, annuities are great products, but they're really designed, frankly, to do two things: grow and then cash flow. And you're paying for that. That's right. If you don't see both of sides of that equation, the grow part and the cash flow part, then frankly an annuity isn't for you. If you don't have a game plan for that cash flow, right, because you're paying for yourself up. I mean, you don't want to lock yourself up. And then frankly, when the interest, when the contract comes due, let's say in the 3 years like this person was talking about, what do? Either you're rolling it to another annuity to save the taxes, delay the taxes really, because you don't save anything. Right. If you take it out, well, then all the interest becomes taxable at that point. And again, the timing could be difficult because we don't know how old this person is. I mean, what if they were close to Medicare age and this was the interest component could have thrown them into a higher, income, could have affected their Part B. So the answer is lots of things to consider with that. Exactly. Before just a yes or no. Yes, and you should. I mean, if you're thinking about this, you're probably talking to an insurance agent. That's cool. Who would be a licensed expert in this area, which is good. But you really should talk to your financial advisor, who hopefully has lots of hats, and they can and really find out
propose other potential alternatives,
and also see, where does this really fit in my financial plan?
Mm-hmm.
Is this really just like a short-term component piece? Is it something that could be a long-term intermediate component piece? I guess the thing I guess I would stress to everyone, and I did this in the early years. I haven't done it in a while, but there's no good deals out there. I mean, there just aren't. There aren't any such thing as a good deal when it comes in the financial service area. Question is the tool fitting the project? Or as my daughter would say, don't use a hammer when a screwdriver will work.
Well,
right?
If you only have a hammer, every problem's a nail.
Thank you, babe. That was even more appropriate. So
you know.
Again, good questions. Hopefully we'll get some more on our text line, 84126, or call us. We'd love to hear your voice. 931-5877, star 5877 from your cell phones. Again, or 84126 from the text line. I guess it's easy to text, you know?
It is easy to text.
No stuttering.
What?
Don't have to hear your voice on the mail. You know you're not
on the radio.
delayed.
Who hears their voice on the mail? Gave me such a look.
You are a tough act today, baby. You are just a tough act today. What can I do? You're killing the old man. Okay. Great. So again, as we're waiting for your phone calls, we would or texting messages, we would love to hear from you. Babe, what do you think? Let's go to dealing with loan obligations.
Okay.
Or I like to call this one Fun with Dick and Jane. We met with Dick and Jane recently. Dick's 66, Jane is 64. They're both retired. They were interested in receiving some advice about how to pay for roofing repairs. Not unusual.
Not at all.
About $15,000.
Right. They also have an outstanding mortgage of $60,000, and they're paying about $500 additional per month to pay that mortgage off faster.
Write that number down. $500 per month. Okay.
Right. And they also owe $5,000 on a recent remodeling to a bathroom, which they put on a credit card.
So they're really preparing their home to be kind of their final domicile, right?
Forever home.
And we see it all the time, right? I'm going to do a little of this, do a little bit of that.
Well, first we have to see them come to the realization that anything that's currently on the market is more expensive than what they already own.
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
Which is good.
We're looking, we have a lot of clients and prospective clients that are saying that they'd like to downsize in retirement to potentially decrease their expenses, but then when they go house hunting, at least in this particular environment at the moment, they're finding that, less house doesn't mean less money necessarily. In a lot of cases, unfortunately, it's meaning more money.
And in the market that we're in today, it's sometimes your hood's getting more expensive, right?
Right. So then they decide that maybe where they are is forever home.
Right. Or they're hoping that forever prices are such that they'll be in a good place. So interesting enough, we're sending them $500 per month net today. And on top of all these goodies, they were asking us for an additional, or considering asking us for an additional $7,500 this year and next year. So
to cover the roof.
Yeah. So this seems a little complicated, and believe me, I did have a little bit of a headache after thinking about this.
Wait, so are they asking us for $7,500 a month or $7,500 per year? Okay. Yeah,
they wanted, again, the whole thing started with this roof, which they were thinking we're going to send them $7,500 this year and $7,500 next year to cover. They're going to do they'll do the whole thing at the end of next year. That's fine, but we're already sending them on top of that $500 a month, which they're actually taking and they're using
to pay
off their mortgage faster. But then they're also sitting there with some additional
basically
credit card debt,
$20,000 of debt.
Well, right, 5 and then
15.
Exactly. So, what are the issues?
Well, first, the main issue that I see is that they're currently carrying $5,000 on a credit card, which is the most expensive place to carry debt. Especially if it's a interest-bearing credit card. Right, unless they have a 0% financing card for a certain amount of time. That $5,000 amortizes over the course of 1 year with a credit card versus other options that have longer amortization periods, like a home equity line of credit, which is 10 years.
Yes.
So we could spread out the same debt over 10 instead of just 1 year.
Yes, and at the same time, it's clear that they don't have a lot of cash sitting around to deal with either expected capital expenditures or to deal with emergencies.
Right, because they went to the credit card.
Not a good
and now
thing
they
to
came
do.
back to us. Well, which is really their own account.
Yeah, and at the same time, they're also not taking advantage of really any tax efficiencies by putting this extra $500 into their mortgage,
Right.
which we're now sending them, and that's what they're using it for. So again, as we usually do, I think the value of having a coach is that the coach can come from a different perspective and say, "Hey, you're thinking about it in this way. Let's think about it maybe in a little different way." Right?
Yes.
So, as you mentioned, Aaron, it would make sense to me
Mm-hmm.
that what they should be doing is consolidating all this debt under one single roof, getting rid of the high interest credit card part.
Their home, they're getting it right.
Exactly.
Consolidating it into their home, essentially.
Right. That's right. Exactly. The roof, the credit cards. Let's pull all those together under one. Okay. At the same time, what that should do is reduce their monthly payment, which is good, and also the interest expense that they would be incurring, because we know credit card debt can go up to 25, 27%, depending on the card you're at. What they then should do really is, instead of paying that money, that $500 that we're giving them now, up against their primary mortgage, they ought to use that
For the home equity.
right, because we also know that the home equity line interest isn't deductible anymore.
Right, under the Trump tax cuts that was
Right.
altered.
And our current president
Mm-hmm.
doesn't seem to be addressing that. I mean, they could, but I doubt it, right?
Well, they're addressing taxes, so that might be part of it. I mean, I've talked to...
It's not one of the givebacks they're talking about, though. They're talking
That's
about
true.
talking about tax. I'm sorry, is it state and local tax credit
Mhm.
back on the way back, real estate taxes, but they're not talking for folks in high.
Higher income brackets.
Exactly. So really, I think that by kind of changing the way that they're looking at this, they really should be in a position where, assuming that their interest was 15% on their credit cards,
Mm-hmm.
Or 20% on the credit card, less 5% on the home equity line, which is okay today. That's going to save them about $750 a year.
That's pretty good.
That's really good. And then also, obviously, they're going to save federal income taxes at the same time.
Right, because we won't have to send them that extra $7,500 for the year.
That's right. We just do it on their home equity line, and then we can continue our payments. So,
Mm-hmm.
The smartest people have the most difficult time when it comes to looking at money. I mean, they truly do, because
Right.
when you're in the middle of this thing and you've got all these emotional attachments to what we did and what we spent it for and what we had spent it for and what we're going to spend it for, sometimes it clouds your thinking. It doesn't mean that you make bad decisions,
No.
but it's like, I always like to say to the clients, after we've kind of gone through these conversations, which is, now, that's kind of easy. This is kind of easy for me because I'm looking on the outside. If I was to give you the same fact situation about me, what would you consider doing? They'd say, well, Jeff, you're the advisor. I got that point.
Well, also...
And maybe they don't think that way, but they probably wouldn't be thinking the way that they were. I think they can see a little more clearly, and they would probably come up with a little bit
Well, also the
better
other thing
answers.
is that as advisors, we're thinking about these situations all day with different clients.
Yes.
Different, the money's being spent in different ways on different things, but we're constantly trying to come up with effective ways to deal with that, whereas most people are just, well, I need to fix the roof now. I want to get the mortgage paid off. We're just, it's more of a myopic focus on one thing at a time, whereas if we can pull it all together, we can make it a little more efficient in some cases.
And, we had a discussion with one of our favorite clients last week.
They're all our favorite.
Well, they're our favorites, but one of our favorite clients who was talking to us about how they had a life insurance policy, remember?
Yes, I do.
And about how, well, hey, should I surrender this contract so I can pay for the boat?
I did hear this conversation through the wall of our old office.
Uh-huh.
And
There were
There were a
laughs,
few
right.
other comments involved, something about liberal children.
Right.
Because I heard the story about myself.
That was let's just call that
That was the color.
That was like the married children without children parental lament. Okay, that's kind of what was happening.
Oh, you were commiserating.
Yes, we were. Thank you, babe. We were commiserating. About
Okay.
Crying. We were commiserating. About
Yes.
It was fun, but what's interesting is that as he and I were talking this through, really in that particular situation, the conversation really came down to you need $20,000-$30,000. It's not a small amount of money.
No.
But certainly is something that was within his budget. We could, if we had to, we could cash flow it to them, and it wasn't a big deal.
Mm-hmm.
But the life insurance component of this thing was very important, especially the way the tax laws have changed in regard to children, non-spouses, inheriting IRAs.
Right, because they have to be liquidated within 10 years now.
This is huge. I mean, it's really, really huge. Most small IRAs, we'll talk about, I would say under $50,000. In the past, we had basically seen beneficiaries just take the money.
Sure.
It's called, I'll pay the tax. It's not really changing my bracket too much, but I'm going to take this money. I'll pay the tax.
What if you end up with an IRA of $1 million?
Or even $200,000 or $300,000.
Right.
The way the tax laws are structured now and the way they're talking about it in the future, even though I don't really put a lot of credence to it, we're looking at a lot of income taxes that involve a lot of loss of capital.
Right.
And the whole concept and our discussions again came down to, which is what you kind of heard a little bit about this, is that, it's appropriate, I think, and at least what I am doing is planning for the next generation that at this point doesn't exist yet. Please, Lord. Okay? Yet. So those grandchildren,
they better get a lot of cash.
Right. Those, trust me, they'll be rich.
A lot.
Those children, those great-grandchildren, okay,
goodness.
that could be there, which I probably will never get to see when I'm in my lifetime.
Gosh.
The bottom line to that is that they're going to be in lower tax brackets than their parents, who most likely will be at their current dad's age or older, when they're receiving these inheritances. Why would we want to? I mean, if we want to look for the least amount of leakage or shrinkage of our estate, why would we not pass significant amount of assets to the next generations? Because they're in a lower bracket. Why should the kids have, or the grandkids have to wait for their parents to pass away to get this money? I mean,
especially because it could be
and
reduced
we don't
by
talk
a
about
third
this every
or
week,
more.
even though I feel like we do. And I know, I mean, we're having these conversations every single day with clients.
Well, I think that people should
it's important,
right? Well, to put it in perspective, if you have IRA assets that are totaling over 100,000 or more, you could see over a third of those assets depleted through taxes during that during your transfer from to a non-spouse. So
right,
that's pretty significant.
It's very significant, especially if you're in your highest earning years.
Well, right. Well, as the current owner of the IRA,
right,
you worked all of this time to create those funds that represents your entire working career. Now you've had the opportunity to live off of those during your retirement. Then when you pass away, passing those assets to your children or grandchildren or great-grandchildren is the next priority. And to lose a third of those assets to taxation, well, I mean, if you have $1 million IRA, that's $300,000.
Yeah, but think about it this way, honey, and maybe this makes it more real, because we talk about $1 million. What if you're sitting today, like many of our clients are, some have much more, some have less, of $500,000 of IRA assets today. I'm 60. Well, I'm 64. I'm going to be 64 in 2 months. 64. Normal mortality is 84.
And every day you're here, you're more likely to be here then too.
Rule 72.
Mm-hmm.
How long does it take money double? Or what's the rate that takes money to double. Well, if I have 20 years, that means I'm talking about 3.5%. Are you kidding me? Hopefully, your assets are going to grow, even if you're taking distributions
right.
by 3.5%. I mean, heck, if we were in a normal interest rate environment, you wouldn't even talk about it. But that means that money that you have today in your 60s is going to be worth $1 million in your 80s, maybe more, maybe a lot more.
Right, so you can't just think about your assets today. You have to think about what they're going to look like when this transition is going to happen.
You know, when I started with your grandpa in the life insurance business 40 years ago,
they had life insurance back.
Yeah, they did. And actually it was kind of cool is when I went to see your grandpa get an award in New York, with the Equitable of New York, they took us into the boardroom where they had a copy of General Custer's and his lieutenant's life insurance policy. This is kind of cool. Custer had a $10,000 life insurance policy.
Because it got paid out, huh?
Oh, my God. Can you imagine how much money that was? I mean, that was like $1 million policy.
Well, so...
In today's dollars. But, you know, my point is that people didn't have that money.
Right.
You know, my grandparents, you know, my mom, and, you know, my aunts, they probably got like $10,000, $20,000 a piece. They sold the house. They sold the CD. You know, they had CDs.
Well, that's because they didn't have to generate the income for retirement. They were living off of pensions mainly.
And Social Security, right. So it's different now.
It's a lot different now.
You know, you don't have to quote me, but everybody's going to be a rich guy. I mean, we've made this transformation to IRA from 401. I mean, really from pensions to defined contribution, i.e. 401ks, IRAs, Roth IRAs,
simple
SEPs, simples. You need to have capital. You're being forced to create the capital for your retirement income, which is going to be the second leg of that stool if you think about it with your Social Security benefits. You're going to pass these on. You want to pass these on as effectively and efficiently as you can on a tax basis to the next generations. But in reality, our generation, we didn't even start this stuff until 1990 because there were no IRAs before 90. In your generation, obviously, babe, guess what?
Started day one, pretty much.
That's right. They were there. They were available. And you've been saving for a long time. I mean, you've been saving for, a decade, et cetera. So, I mean, the cool part is that where your asset base is, I'm not going to say it on the radio, of course, but where
thank you.
Where your asset base is compared to where your mom and I were, it's not even comparable. I mean, it's not even close because we didn't have that same A, savings mentality, but B, we also were in profit sharing plans, defined benefit plans. We weren't in
defined contribution.
Exactly.
Plans. Mm-hmm.
So, gotta think about this. I mean, you really need to start talking to your advisor. Truth is, they should be talking to you. If they're really doing their job, they should be bringing this up to you and saying, "Hey, this is coming."
Well, this is an important component of a retirement plan because
Absolutely.
It's going to have a large impact on your family's wealth in the future.
Yeah, and and I always like to think, and again, I'm kind of dreaming about this a little bit, but daydreaming on it, but I'm thinking about those beneficiaries that are maybe in their 20s or 30s, maybe 40s, when they're inheriting this money, or even their 20s if they're grandchildren, great-grandchildren, etc. What would have been, how could their life be different? How could it be more financially secure? How much better could it be for them inheriting money at that time? How much different would my life have been if I'd had $200,000, $300,000, $400,000 when I was in my 30s and 40s, when you guys were just being born? Could have been better school, but could have actually saved for college for you instead of cash flowing it when you got there. Could I have then taken my other assets and then directed them to do other things? Could I have been more charitable? Could I have, what are the things that could I have been more entrepreneurial?
Mm-hmm.
Just think about that. I mean, our generation, baby boomers, we have an opportunity to engineer, in my opinion, 2 to 3 generations down from where we are today. You want to do it. You want to think about it. You want to put, and the nice part is that, as we talk to most clients about, you don't have to go run back to your lawyer.
No, many of these things can be taken care of through beneficiary designations, which are no cost to change.
And also, you can change it when you want.
That's right. And, a lot of people I bet are sitting there thinking like, I don't care about if my kids get any money or not. They'll be lucky to get what they get. But then once you've been retired for a couple of years and you see that the plan is working for you, that the cash flow is working, and that you're still invested in the market, probably very similarly to the way that you were while you were working, then you'll start to say, well, hey, what are we going to do about this?
Well, also what we've seen is the markets. The markets have been, if you've been invested and you've been doing it prudently, in the last 10 years, we've seen
remarkable growth.
But
also we know that over any 20-year period, if we look at the market, you'll see positive results.
Exactly, which could also at the same time sometimes be remarkable, sometimes be unremarkable, but at the same time, like you're saying, honey, it's going to be forward. That's the cool part of planning, in my opinion.
Right.
That's for us, that's the fun, which is setting the stage for financial success, hopefully for 1, 2, 3 generations down. And what I love, and you know this also, nobody else is talking about this.
It's true.
You don't see it in the literature. Go on the internet. There's not a single article about this discussing these whatsoever. It isn't because people aren't thinking in this way. We're in the middle of the greatest transfer of wealth, they say, intergenerationally. It's true.
It's like over $1 trillion or something insane.
But now
like that.
It's really even further, which is now that the law has changed, this is a big deal. And you know what? We like big deals, right?
Well, right. We like to take advantage of big deals.
Absolutely.
We have an excellent text question now.
Fabo.
Good morning. That's how it starts.
You're so nice. Good morning.
I'm 55. My husband is 59. We have $775,000 in a TSP, which is a thrift savings plan, so it's probably a government worker. We are planning on retiring in 5 years. What percentage of our retirement accounts do you recommend having in a guaranteed income fund?
And we're talking about, I assume that she's referring to pre-retirement.
I believe so, because they are 5 years away from retirement, and their total together is $775,000.
Okay. So obviously the first thing that we would do is we would start with a risk tolerance questionnaire, right?
Right.
To figure out what their appropriate mix would be. So let's just assume, if we may, for the sake of argument here, is that they come out to be like just about everybody else that we have. Which is? They're moderate to moderately conservative investors, which means
moderately aggressive, right in that.
Yeah. Well, aggressively moderate.
Aggressively moderate. That's right. They're aggressively moderate.
So so on the low end, the conservative side, they ought to be really looking at about a 60% equity exposure, which means 40% would be in bonds, GICs, guaranteed interest contracts, are parts of this. And then on the high end, assuming they're more
moderately aggressive.
Right.
Or aggressively moderate.
Thank you. Aggressively moderate. That they're maybe sitting up at the 75% level. 80% is considered growth. So
right, so 60 to 75% equities, which would translate to 40 to 30 to 25% bonds and cash.
Right. So now if they do have an option of a guaranteed interest contract, which is generally, and that's what
they're in a TSP, yes.
Right. So what we're talking about here is that these guaranteed interest contracts are basically like CDs, but that are typically issued by insurance companies. And what happens is they're providing a fixed interest guarantee for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 year period. I would certainly say that they provide the opportunity for a lower rate of volatility than other types of fixed income instruments, i.e. bonds. And that, frankly, they might be a nice alternative as a part of a fixed income strategy. How much would you recommend maybe
as
part of the fixed income component?
I mean, I think that's spot on depending upon what their risk tolerance is. If they're falling into that moderate range, anywhere on the low to high end, 60 to 75% on the equity side. And, it's nice they mentioned that they're 5 years out from retirement, but what we would most likely say is that's really irrelevant, because we know that most likely you're going to be retired for just as long, if not longer, than you were working.
You'll keep that same mix for your entire life.
Right, because that's how most likely you built your wealth. Why we see your retirement as a transition and an opportunity to expand your investment options, but we don't necessarily see this as a time to change your investment objective because we still have the same goal, which is to fund your retirement.
Right. Now, I would say that specifically, if I was doing some recommendations to them in terms of their modeling, I would probably suggest that maybe a third of their fixed income portion go to a guaranteed interest contract. We would also have some of it that would be into shorter term bonds, because then what happens is if interest rates do rise,
those are going to rise. It's less of a dramatic rise. I think the best way that I ever heard it explained is that bonds duration and interest rates are like a seesaw. So if you're sitting at the very center of a seesaw, you don't feel the tilting nearly as much. But as you move out, that would be the longer the duration of a bond, the more tilting that you are going to feel, because as interest rates rise, you are going to see the face value, you're going to see the bond value decrease. Yeah,
so again, I think, to me, I would say a third, as we're doing with our other clients, a third into shorter term maturities, less than 3 years. And then I might consider that for that other third of the fixed income part. We might look at something that, maybe is a combination of some high yield to give us a little bit of flavor, and then, or possibly something that would be some government intermediate bonds, something that would maybe have a 5-year maturity.
What are the drawbacks to the guaranteed income fund?
Well, what happens is that you lock that principal that you've put into that account, into that selection, for the period of time. If you decide you want to withdraw money from there, if they'll permit you, you can have what's called a market value adjustment.
Okay.
Which means that it's going to reflect what the bond values are today versus what you purchased them at. And you could see, again, if interest rates go up,
could see a decrease in the market value.
And it can be very significant. Right. Every 1% increase in rates can be a 20% decrease in the bond values.
That's like the seesaw. If you're at the very end of the seesaw, you're going to feel it all the way.
Right. Again, creating a strategy which is diversified in terms of your fixed income, and as well as diversified in your equity investments, just makes a lot of sense. What it won't do is it won't improve the quality of the ride. What it'll do is improve the smoothness of the ride. You take the highs and the lows out as much as you can out. That's what diversification does. It smooths returns. It's not really there to enhance returns. And that's the truth of it.
Sure.
I think.
Well, also, I think it's important that you basically pointed out without saying it that there's different types of risk. Just not market risk. You have interest rate risk with bonds. So it's important to remember that just because it's on the fixed income side, you still want to create diversification in that space also. This just happens to be an option that not everyone has access to, but in the TSP, you do.
Yeah, that's cool. And again, the nice part about the TSP is that you're in very low index funds, low cost index funds, which is great. So keep that TSP money in there as long as you can before you retire. And then it can be an appropriate time to change if you want. Well, good. We've got about 7 minutes left. 6 minutes left, I'm sorry. Our phone lines are open. We'd love to hear from you. 931-5877, star 5877 for your cell phones, or 84126 from the text line. Babe, I was going to say that I did, you want to talk about Joe and his wife?
Joe and Sally?
Yeah, Joe and Sally.
It's kind of a long one, so we might have to continue it into next week, but let's do it.
Well, that's great. So Joe and Sally write that they both would like to retire in the next 3 years.
They both happen to be 62 as well.
Yes. So, and they've tried to save as well as they could up until then. They're now ready to focus on their retirement planning. They've listened to Aaron and I for several years and like the way that we approach the subject information we're given. Well, we try to make it a little fun. Because truthfully, our jobs are fun, so we enjoy doing that.
And also, this is supposed to be a fun time.
Yes.
It's not supposed to be terrifying.
Could you please talk about how and what are the next steps involved if we want to come to visit with you? Well, number one is thank you for your comments, right?
Such kind words.
Yeah.
Truly.
And secondarily, I think it's important that we kind of go back to what we think are the basics.
Right.
Retirement planning has two distinct parts.
Science and art.
Yes.
Science is the math behind your retirement plan.
The algebra.
Right. And the art is really the investment side of things and the management of your investments.
Right. Creating that portfolio with purpose to deliver the results that you need. But it always starts with the math. And frankly, for some people, and very few that we see, but for some people, it ends with the math.
Right. If you're in a situation where we, as we like to say, we put your numbers on the board, we put the math up there, and it looks like we have some work to do before we can get to retirement, then we have to go back to the math again and say, how do we get there? We can't jump to the science.
Yes. And
I mean, to the art, rather.
You can't invest your way out.
Right.
One way that we deal with these things, and we talked about this today a little bit earlier, was dealing with debt obligations.
The most efficient way to deal with your debt obligations, hopefully making hopefully decreasing the pull on your assets that your debt service requires.
Yes, it's easier to pay off debt than it is to grow capital, period.
Absolutely.
Right? So let's talk about their situation a little bit.
All right. So Joe works for a major aerospace contractor we've all heard of. And Sally is a nurse at a local hospital. So they have accumulated $780,000 in retirement assets and about $110,000 in savings and other investments. So those are outside of their retirement accounts.
Nice little nest egg, right?
Right. So when we asked Joe and Sally to give us an idea of how much, what's their net take-home pay per month, between the two of them, they're bringing home about $6,000 a month. We also asked, did your after-tax savings grow, that $110,000 over the last year? Did it grow any, or did it stay essentially the same?
Through contributions.
Correct. And they said that it stayed essentially the same.
No way.
No.
They're actually spending everything they're bringing in, but they're still making good contributions to retirement plans.
Right, because we're looking at the net of what they're bringing home and spending. This does not account for the spending that comes out of their paycheck before they receive it.
Right. And that isn't unusual either, is it?
Well, you already did your saving.
There you go.
So we need to increase that $6,000 because that's net. So in retirement, we'll have to pay taxes in order to get the net, just like you have a gross pay, taxes are taken out, you receive the net. Similar in retirement. However, it'll just be income tax as opposed to all the other taxes that are attributed to your paycheck. So when we gross it up for taxes by about 25%, we get that Joe and Sally need $7,500 a month.
Cash in hand.
Correct. Cash in hand.
I'm sorry, that's not correct. You're right. It is gross.
That is gross.
Gross. We know that Joe's pension is about $2,400 a month, as well as his Social Security at $66, and Sally has approximately $1,100 of Social Security at $66, which is just. Frankly, we probably tell you actually have $1,200 because the spousal option is actually better than hers.
Yes. So you got 100 extra bucks.
Woo-hoo. So between all those sources, they're still going to have a deficiency or deficit of about $1,500 per month. $18,000 divided by 4%, that comes out to be approximately
$480,000.
That's right. So, yep.
Right, and we use 4% because we're saying that if we keep our withdrawal rate consistent at 4% over a long period of time, we believe that you should be able to maintain the value of your assets. So that's why we divide your monthly income need or your annual income need by 4% to determine what amount of capital we'll need.
Right, and in doing that, we know that they started with $780,000 retirement assets, $110,000 of other assets. So
$890,000 they have.
Woo-hoo. Right. So they're rock stars, right? They needed $480,000 basically allocated of their assets to cover what I like to call the milk money. And the rest of it, it's all fun.
It is all fun.
And they obviously were happy with what our analysis of the situation was. And that's kind of part of the fun of it, right?
Yes, it is.
Easy for you to get in the fun as well. Just give us a call, 314-863-0008. Again, 314-863-0008. Calls for a free coaching session. See you next week.
The opinions voiced in this show are for general information only and are not intended to provide specific advice or recommendations for any individual. To determine which investments may be appropriate for you, consult with your attorney, accountant, and financial advisor or tax advisor prior to investing. Securities offered through LPL Financial, member FINRA SIPC. Investment advice offered through Private Advisor Group, a registered investment advisor. Private Advisor Group and JBL Financial Services, Inc. are separate entities from LPL Financial.
This is Jeff Lapidus, the Retirement Coach. We'll be back next week at 10 a.m. here on the Big 550 KTRS.